Hi, and welcome to another video where we talk about healing, trauma, and all things self-development. The first thing that I think is very important to understand before we talk about healing or any kind of trauma therapy, I think it's important to understand human nature. When we understand human nature, we can understand what's normal and what's trauma related. A lot of times, things that are normal we are taught are not are abnormal or they're trauma related, when really they're just human tendencies to self-destruct. When we talk about healing, the first thing we need to break down is human behavior. Understanding human behavior is critical because we can then differentiate what comes from trauma and what is just normal human behavior. And we, as human beings, have a destructive side, we have a shadow side, we have a side that works against us, and then we also have a side that works for us and wants us to progress and wants us to grow. And so is very important to understand both of those aspects of ourselves. The problem with how we're taught about healing is that a lot of things are commercialized. We're taught to buy this, we're taught to go to therapy, we have to pay. Healing requires money, healing requires you to buy products and expensive therapies, and it just is never ending. And this is not healing. Is, if you look at the nature of the human body, healing is a mechanism that's designed within the human body. We don't really need to do anything to heal our bodies. When you get injured, when you get a cut, the body naturally heals itself. And so I believe that there are mechanisms that are in place that we can practice, that are natural methods of healing. And healing is not situated in someone else's hands, and it's not as complicated as it's made out to be. The concepts and theories that are propagated by the healing and therapy industry keep people in a loop, keep people in trauma. They don't necessarily free people of trauma. So what the industry is there to do is make money out of your trauma, is to use your trauma and to it keeps you in a loop because it needs to make money, and it wouldn't give you the answers because then that wouldn't profit them. You don't come back at peace with yourself fully. And so what we're taught is that trauma is complex and it's linked to childhood experiences, and every single thing nowadays is what we're taught is that is linked to some childhood neglect or some childhood issue, and that is not the case. There are natural human tendencies that work against us, that make us behave in the ways that we behave. Not everything that we do that isn't positive is linked to some childhood trauma. I eat unhealthy foods. It doesn't have to be related to trauma. It could just be that I desire unhealthy foods. That what we have to understand is that human nature is not always working for us. And while the past does matter, it's not like it's completely irrelevant. It does matter. It is not where healing is found. It's not where you find healing. It can help you to understand yourself better. It can give you some awareness, but it's not where you will find your healing. But the good news is healing is in your hands, and it's something that you can work towards, and it's not something so far away from you, and it's not so complicated. So the first step that we need to take is to understand the problem. We need to understand the problem so we can provide the right solution. If we think everything is trauma related, then we're going to continue to dig in places where there's no digging needed. If we understand human behavior, if we understand how human beings naturally behave, and we can and know how how human beings behave after trauma. If we can differentiate those two, it gives a lot more clarity um, into understanding ourselves and where we really need to do healing. If you're making bad decisions and bad choices in life, it's not always linked to some trauma. Yeah, that we need to differentiate normal human behavior from trauma related behavior, and that's why that it's important to talk about that first before we go into anything. What we have to understand is that we're always gonna experience pain and some form of suffering. We're gonna experience loss, we're gonna experience grief, we're gonna experience heartbreak. We're always gonna be in some form of suffering throughout our lives. And so, does that mean that you need to be in therapy for all your life? No, it means that you need to learn how to deal with life, how to deal with problems, how to deal with pain, and how to overcome them yourselves. You can't always rely on therapy to help you. And previously, people didn't have therapy. People didn't rely on therapy to deal with life and to manage and navigate their problems. And so, how did they do it? How were people in the past able to navigate even worse situations where life was a lot more harder? Like we have life, and our life is a lot more easier. You know, we have a lot less stress in terms of when are we going to eat, when will food come. We didn't need to rely on the weather for our food. We have such less stress in our lives, and yet we're even more depressed than previous generations. So we need to look at, okay, if nowadays everyone needs therapy, therapy wasn't available previously. So how did people cope? And people, if you look at them, they were more resilient. People who are older are a lot more resilient than the younger generation. And so this is just proof that we don't need therapy to heal. We don't need therapy is not the answer to healing. And you see a lot of people nowadays are going to therapy, but there's very little impact or positive impact. And where you understand positive impact is how people interact in relationships. When you're going to therapy, therapy will then help you to manage your emotions and to relate better and to be to have better relationships. But we don't see the impact of that. We don't see that therapy actually helped me to improve my relationships. And until we can have that data and until we can have that statistics, we can then say actually therapy works and therapy is making a difference in people's lives. But we don't have that, and we don't have that data that tells us that therapy is improving people's relationships. Perhaps it is improving the mental health because people are expressing themselves, and that is really helpful to express yourself, to express your thoughts, to have people that you can go to. But it's not, therapy is not a necessity to express yourself. You don't need therapy to express yourself.